Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining the call tonight. I am excited to be here. And if you're surprised to see an unfamiliar face, then I will introduce myself. But my brother Trent typically hosts these calls, and he is on a family vacation. And so I am honored to fill in and happy to talk with you guys about such an important topic. These calls are awesome. If you've never been to one, then welcome. You're going to love what we have in store for you. If you've been before, you might see something a little bit new this time, a little bit different. I hope you do. I hope you learn something today. I am not going to do this alone. I have lots of support, lots of backup, some guests, some special people coming to join us that are a lot smarter than me. And so we are going to have some great information for you today. So thanks for being here. If you are struggling with your metabolic health, if you've been struggling, you're not alone. Okay. And if you have a family member or a friend who has been struggling with their health and you'd like to have them join this call, please do. We do these calls weekly. We kind of hope that they become part of your weekly routine, because the more you learn, the more times you kind of get exposed to what we are sharing and teaching, the more you're able to really implement those tools and change your lifestyle and find a new trajectory, find a new path where you can really see some steady progress with your health. So thank you again for being here. I'm excited seeing this room fill up, and we're up to 117 people. Feel free to pop in the chat and tell us where you're joining from. Really appreciate you spending your time here and being with us tonight. Now, something kind of exciting is we have Lindsay. I'm going to give you more information on Lindsay Venn in just a minute here, but she is going to teach us about metabolic health in general, but really go deep on menopause and hormones. And if you are not a female dealing with that, you are still going to learn a lot tonight. There is a huge takeaway. And so please stay tuned. We're going to get to that. But I want to give you a little bit of background of who I actually am. And I'm just checking the chat. I'm seeing that Spanish translation is on. We've got people in Newport Beach. We've got people in Ohio, North Carolina, Michigan, Wyoming, New York City, Utah, Arizona, Florida, Alaska, Tucson. I mean, amazing. This is really fun to see. Toronto, I mean, Gainesville, Florida, so awesome. So thank you for popping in the chat and saying where you're joining from. I want to tell you who I am, okay? So this is my dad. And if you've heard my brother Trent do these calls before, you've seen my dad before. He usually always tells you a little bit about my dad. And the reason that I want to start by introducing myself this way is, first of all, I'm proud to be his daughter, but also my father, when he was at the age of 58, was diagnosed with colon cancer. And this just completely caught us all by surprise. It was the last thing I expected to hear about my dad. My dad was not like a sickly person. I never thought of him as having, health issues. And when I first heard this diagnosis, I just thought, well, of course he's going to beat this. He's so young. He has so much life left to live. My kids were really young. And, you know, as I went down the path of trying to figure out what we could do to help my dad, it really came to light for me for the first time. And I'm embarrassed to say how unaware I was of how poor his health was. And I just didn't realize that the fact that he had psoriasis, a skin disease, autoimmune disease, he had high blood pressure and high cholesterol, and he was constantly battling his weight. He was always on another diet. The fact that he was, struggling all the time with gut health issues, and saw so many things reflected in so many aspects of his life because of that. I just didn't realize that all of those metabolic issues were warning signs shouting at us to say, hey, things are not going well internally. And now I know things that I wish I would have known before, things that I think very possibly could have saved my father if I would have known. and things that I wish I would have seen as precursors. And so once you learn all of that, it's hard to unlearn it. Once your eyes have been opened to what can happen, what side effects of one medication can lead to another medication, and that whole path, once you've seen it, it's hard to unsee it. And my brother really went on this mission of how do we, it's too late for our dad, but whose dad is it not too late for? And is that you? Is it your sister? Is it your friend? Is it your mother or father? And I am so grateful to know that we have so much more power than I ever thought before to, not be doomed to genetic issues with our health. Very often there is so much we can do. And so this is really, even though that's kind of a sad story to start with and to tell you guys, to introduce myself, this really is a message of hope. And I'm excited to talk to you guys about what we have in store because there is so much possibility. And in fact, I'm going to start out by giving us a little bit of hope by telling you guys a pretty incredible story. I'm going to talk to you about Sarah. I'm going to actually bring Sarah on as a guest right now. And Sarah, let's see here. I think I just need to, there you go. Are you here with me, Sarah? Awesome. And I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Okay.
Okay, so I have a couple questions for Sarah, and I'm really grateful that Sarah was willing to join me today. Sarah's somebody that I've known, actually, that I live in the same area as Sarah, and I've always looked up to her, and she's just this incredible woman who, from my view, seemed to be in fantastic health and raising her beautiful children and just living life to the fullest. And so Sarah, I'm not going to steal your story. I'm actually going to ask you. So can you tell us a little bit, Sarah, where were you at with your health prior to finding the Feel Great system?
Absolutely. Thanks. So yeah, I felt like I was in great shape. Actually, I was, let's see, this health journey for me began at the end of 2022. I went for my annual physical. I felt like I'm going to get a pat on the head and then good job and out you go. Because I'm a runner and I stay active and I don't know, I just felt like things were great. And he sat me down and said, your blood work is terrible. Your cholesterol is so high. And I have real concerns about it. And I want to put you on a statin. And kind of like Brittany, my dad had a different issue, but when he was 69, he suffered a heart attack. We were all there with him. It was like the day after Thanksgiving. We were all hiking and there went dad. Now, he survived. My brother's a doctor. My sister's a nurse. And so we were really lucky. He's 87, doing great. But that was a wake up call. So when I hear high cholesterol, that was a trigger for me, like, oh, I've got to do something. But when I went and read about statins, I hated the look of the side effects. I did not want to do it. So for the year 2023, I went on this mission to fix it. I hadn't talked to Brittany. I didn't know about Unicity. I didn't know any of this. So I ran about 1,400 miles. Like I really stepped up my running. I changed my diet. I dropped a little bit of weight. I did some intermittent fasting. I did the 5-2 method where 5 days a week you eat healthy and then 2 days you really calorie restrict. And I was feeling really great. I ran a marathon that October, went into the doctor again, so confident, thinking, I've got this. My cholesterol after all that went up 25 points because in the mix there is I'm going through menopause. There's all these other changes happening. And so all of a sudden I thought I just worked harder than I've ever worked. And I lost, I think, a total of 12 pounds after all that in a whole year and just felt incredibly frustrated. And I actually happened to run into a mutual friend who told me about that she was doing this Unicity protocol. So I thought, well, I might as well try it. And I'm sort of a skeptic. And I thought, this is just me throwing my money away, but I'll try anything. I was that desperate. So December 15th of last year of 23, I went on the protocol and I could not believe how easy it was after what I had done on my own for all of 2023, after all of the hard work I did last year. This just felt like I've got friends. I have a tool. I have things to do. I have support. I could ask Brittany questions. It was really amazing with I sort of came for the fiber because of my cholesterol problem, but then that Unimate just became my best friend. I never thought I could run in a fasted state, and I really had to train for that. But all of a sudden, I was running like 3, 4 miles. Now I'm up to running 12, 13 miles fasted, easy with my Unimate. So, anyway, Brittany knows that it got to be February and I could not stand it. I felt so good. I felt like my brain fog was lifting. I was actually sleeping for the first time in years. I kind of thought, oh, menopause, I'm just not going to sleep for the rest of my life. That's how that's going to be. So I went and got my blood work done. And in 7 weeks, my cholesterol dropped from 280 to 240. And at that point, my doctor emailed me and said, what are you doing? I love it. Just keep it up. You don't have to go on a statin. This is your thing. I love it. So,
So incredible, Sarah. Well, I mean, first of all, to see how you were feeling shift is huge, right? Because you start noticing a difference and going, wait a second, something's changing here. And then to see it reflected, because you'd thought that before and didn't see it reflected in your labs. And so to see it reflected in your labs, I mean, how did that feel?
I mean, that was just the validation of just, I knew it though. That's what's funny is I knew going into those labs, like they're going to be good, and they were. And so that was amazing. And then just continuing on, I just cannot believe the benefits of this product. And again, I think sometimes people say, well, I'm healthy, I'm doing great, I don't need it. But I think I would have said that same thing. But now that I'm on this, it's like, this is the one thing I won't give up. I'll give up a lot of other things. But this, I feel like I can just age well, and try to keep up with everybody else. It's great.
Well, I have to say too, because I have the privilege of being able to see Sarah in person from time to time, um, I noticed your body composition really has changed. I
Oh,
mean, I don't have you actually lost weight or is it just look that way? I definitely have seen a difference even in that regard, which I wouldn't have even thought that you needed that, but
no, no, you know what? So I had this sneaky spare tire that, it comes up and during your 40s and 50s. And I had a teaching job that required me to wake up early. And that just, when you're sleep deprived. And anyway, I had put on 25 pounds that I thought I was really hiding well, but I had a lot of clothes that didn't fit. And now my closet, it's like, oh my gosh, these clothes fit again. So I think since I started the protocol, the first 7 weeks, I lost 7 pounds, which was a miracle. Because as I told you, it took me a year to lose 12 before. And I think I'm down 15 since starting, which really I'm not trying to lose the weight. But it's just amazing. And like you're saying, Brittany, I do feel like things fit better.
yeah.
I'm losing the weight in the hard to lose places.
Yeah.
So it's amazing.
Okay, I have one question for you because I know during the menopausal phase, sometimes it does feel like things are a bit harder, and we're going to talk more about that with Lindsay in a minute, which I'm really excited for. But I wanted to kind of ask you, like, you thought, and you were in so many ways living a very healthy lifestyle, but when you started this protocol, and a lot of you can probably relate to this, all of a sudden you start to realize, like, oh, I did have some vices. I have had some struggles that I didn't really realize until I tried using protocol. So I noticed what those were for me right away. I didn't realize how frequently I was snacking. I didn't realize that pretty much every night I had a late night snack until all of a sudden I was doing this. So what were those things for you?
Yeah, definitely the late night snacking. Also, I bought into the myth that you have to eat oatmeal before you run. I thought to be a good runner, I had to. So I was waking up an hour early to eat oatmeal so then I could run. And now that's amazing. I don't have to get up early. I just get up and run. But the late night snacks are gone. The midday snacks, I didn't know I was such a snacker, but really the no snacking, that that's we have to retrain our brain, because even though we're eating healthy things, sometimes it's like, oh, I'll have cheese and a piece of fruit, but wait a minute, so that's been amazing. And then also it's just reset my brain, because I felt like, okay, menopause just means I'll be a little bit heavy. Okay, those clothes won't fit anymore. And I was kind of okay with it. I didn't have like big issues about it. But now I'm just realizing, wow, this is so exciting. Last weekend, we had a family wedding and a bunch of us did a long run. And I was keeping up with the 30 somethings, and that never happens. So it's, it just feels, um, I feel like the trajectory of where I'm heading has just increased. And I think sometimes we start to settle in thinking, okay, menopause means XYZ. I'm not going to sleep. Maybe I'll have, yeah. Okay. Amanda, what she just said, sorry, I'm reading the comments, but Amanda, 55 and no love handles. That's the goal. And
Yeah.
that's how I'm starting to feel. And
I
so
love it.
that's
So,
incredible.
so Sarah, if somebody was skeptical, what are your final words to a skeptic?
Okay. Yeah. Well, I was very skeptical, and as Brittany knows, but the labs speak for themselves. And so I always encourage people, do your lab work before you start. And then also you actually have to do it. So like I have a dear family member who is hilarious. She's on the protocol, but she's not really fasting in the morning, which is that's fine. That's her choice. But I was really strict about it. So I followed the protocol. And then I I am all about validate with your lab work, and how great that you don't, this isn't something where it has to be based on a feeling. This is based on a piece of paper from Quest Labs that is verifiable. And so, for a skeptic, that money back guarantee is what sold me. I just thought, okay, well, I'll try it for 80 days. And if I hate it, great. But
Fair.
it is a life changer. Like, this is the thing I will not give up
Okay,
going
well,
forward.
thank you so much for coming on this call with me. I can't tell you how beneficial I think this testimonial is for so many people. And I think what you said about like really going all in is crucial. And I hope everybody heard that, because that seems to be a common thread with people who have fantastic results. And so it's worth, really leaning into that advice. So thank you, Sarah. Thanks so much for joining.
Thanks, Britt.
Okay, and now I'm about to introduce the next person. I know I'm bringing people on and off, but I've got to get to this because this is going to be the best part of our call, where we talk to Lindsay Venn. Now, Lindsay Venn is a PA. She is top of her class. She is the best of the best when it comes to metabolic health, understanding hormones, really the deep work of that specialty. Okay. And she's a registered dietitian. She has lots of training, but what's crazy is she's kind of found her own path. She works with her clients one-on-one. That's something she can explain to you as she's talking of where you can actually find her. I refer people to her all the time because I know that they are going to get better results if they're working with her. She really is something special. And Insulin IQ is a group that she's part of. And I've learned so much from there, so much from Lindsay. I am so grateful that you're willing to come on here. And I cannot wait to hear what you have to teach us today when it comes specifically to female hormones. And so I'm going to bring you on with me, and you can just take it away, Lindsay. I
Hi.
actually, I just make you the full host. I think I can.
Oh,
Um,
I
oh,
think
wait. Or maybe I can just minimize myself. I just don't want to be on here with you. I want you to take the full.
oh,
Okay,
just
I'm going to remove my own spotlight. I think that's how I do it. Okay, there you go, Lindsay. Thank you for doing this.
you're welcome. Thank you for gonna make me tear up. Thank you for the kind introduction and welcome everybody. I am going to attempt to share my screen here. I've moved so many different locations in the last little bit that I'm gonna hope technology keeps up with all of my movements. So like Brittany said, today we're going to focus on menopause. I'm excited too, because I will tell you the majority of my patients are menopausal women, and they are such an acknowledged, underserved population and so miserable. And so it's really great to be able to make this the highlight of one of our calls and really dive deep into what it all means. So insulin resistance and menopause. Oops, I'll go right back there. So you can find me, like Brittany said, Insulin IQ. What a wonderful resource. If you want a cheap way to have access to me and my wonderful team, go to insuliniq.com. They have a 10-day free trial right now. And then if you need more in-depth stuff, you can certainly find me at Venn Integrative Medicine. So insulin resistance, as you know, the reason that the Feel Great system works the way it works is because it improves insulin resistance. This is the root cause of so many what we call non-communicable diseases, meaning you can't catch these. These are things like high blood pressure and coronary artery disease and mental health. You name it. If you can't catch it from your neighbor, insulin resistance is probably the cause of it. And so how does this work? What is insulin resistance and why does this happen? Well, insulin is this lovely thing that works just like a key over here in a lock that allows glucose to get into the cell. In a normally functioning person, it works just like we see over here in this picture. Insulin sits into the receptor and the receptor opens up this GLUT4 over here to allow glucose into the cell and lets the cell do what it's supposed to do. This is every single cell in the body, including our ovaries. And that's part of why insulin resistance and menopause go hand in hand. So insulin resistance itself is exactly what it sounds like. It is the cell is now resistant to the effects of insulin, meaning this receptor over here doesn't work. So glucose can no longer get into the cell. Well, why is this a problem? Now, let me talk about who should worry about it first. Signs and symptoms. Do you have it? Do you need to worry about it? Well, if you have things like skin tags, insulin's a growth hormone, so it makes things grow that shouldn't be growing. So excessive growth of skin. Acanthosis nigricans, which is excessive skin pigmentation. Excessive belly fat, especially the hard, firm kind that's underneath the skin. Fatigue is one of the major signs of insulin resistance. And then this sense of hangriness, this you have to eat, especially like 2 hours after you just ate. These are signs and symptoms that we have to watch out for. So what happens? Well, when we become insulin resistant, it's almost like a defense mechanism. Our cells have become so overfed that they become resistant. So they can no longer have carbs and fat shoved into them. These include things like the liver and the muscle and the brain and whatnot. But the cells that don't become insulin resistant are our fat. They easily accept fat in by way of not becoming resistant to insulin, and therefore that's where excessive weight comes from. The problem, though, with general health is when we are storing fat in places where we shouldn't be. Muscle is not there to store fat. Our liver is not there to store fat. We don't want to be doing that. But insulin, when it becomes excessively high, will create this problem. And it leads to issues like you can see over here in red, where we're having excessive glucose production. We are having a decrease in lipolysis, which is fat burning. All these things that we don't want to happen when insulin levels are high. So how do you measure this? If you want to measure and look at your own labs, get a fasting insulin. Hopefully your doctor is in agreement to ordering, though most doctors are not. But if you can get a fasting insulin, the goal is less than 6. The reference range is bigger than this, but the goal is less than 6 to be metabolically healthy. Or everybody on the planet will have, just like Sarah had, a cholesterol panel. And so if you take your triglyceride, divide by your HDL, we want that ratio to be less than 1.5. If you're there, you're not insulin resistant. If you're above that, you are. And the higher, the worse it is. So let's talk about what is the relationship when it comes to menopause. Is there a relationship? Is there something that we could be considering? Is there a cause and effect kind of scenario? This is that whole chicken and egg scenario. Does insulin resistance cause menopause, or does menopause cause insulin resistance? How does fixing our insulin resistance impact the misery of menopause? So first of all, what is the definition of menopause? A lot of people don't know this, but really what it is the cessation of periods. I get really frustrated when people say, oh, I'm through menopause. Menopause is over. No, no, no. For the rest of your life, you're in menopause, unfortunately, women, because we don't have periods anymore. What they're talking about is their symptoms of menopause have gone away because the body has kind of given up on the hormones and the things that they want to happen with their hormones. So why do we have cessation of periods? Is because we stop producing estrogen because our ovaries have come to failure with age. What are the symptoms? You can see them over here on the slide. The primary ones I hear, just like Sarah said, insomnia is huge. Poor people in menopause are miserable. They just do not sleep. But they're tired. They don't have any libido. They have hot flashes. They have weight gain, particularly around the midsection. I love her little sneaky spare tire analogy because it is so true. If you're in menopause, this fat tire or this spare tire sneaks up on you for sure. Brain fog, all of those things 100% happen when it comes to menopause. But I also like to point out that a lot of these symptoms are very, very similar to PCOS. You know, these are very different things. PCOS happens in adolescence or, you know, early 20s type of thing, but we have the weight gain, we have the abnormal periods, we have things like acne and hair loss, irritability, etc. So why are these symptoms so similar in people? Well, it's because both are related to a decrease in estrogen. So when we have a decrease in estrogen, we have a variety of different side effects, and one of them is an increase in insulin. When estrogen goes down, we have an increase in insulin, and that's why menopause can lead to worsening insulin resistance. Women who have been metabolically healthy their entire lives can become insulin resistant because of menopause. The reason that insulin, so back to the chicken egg thing, you guys that have heard me talk before, also high insulin, because it shuts off the enzyme aromatase, we now have low estrogen because we're not converting our androgens to estrogens. And so the chicken and egg question is both. Menopause will cause insulin resistance, and insulin resistance will cause a decrease in estrogen leading to PCOS. So let's talk about these different hormones that we talk about in women that are called sex hormones. And so sex hormones include primarily estrogen. There are three forms of estrogen in the body. There's estriol, estradiol, and estrone. Those are the three main ones that we talk about. Estradiol is the primary hormone when it comes to all of these different symptoms. It is the one that functions the most to do the female things that we want to do. A lot of the symptoms here are listed again in a different form. We then have progesterone. Progesterone is actually primarily excreted after we ovulate. And so what happens when we stop ovulating? We have a decrease in progesterone. Progesterone is our feel-good hormone. It is the one that keeps our mood stable. It helps us sleep. It does help prevent some weight gain. In younger people, it does help with fertility issues. I mean, it's such an important hormone that we stop producing because we stop ovulating. And so we want to do something about that if possible. And then last, you guys all hear me talk about testosterone, but only in men. So in women, where does testosterone play a role? It's a huge role. I call it the feel-good hormone, just like our feel-great system. It's our feel-good hormone. It impacts libido, our muscle. It helps prevent sarcopenia and helps retain lean body mass. It helps with fatigue, mood, brain fog, just overall sense of well-being. I tell patients you're going to feel 10 years younger if we can boost this, and it also helps with weight. So if you want to measure these are labs that I recommend to have your doctor draw. And you'll see there's only two of them. It's really surprising because a lot of people say, well, what about my progesterone? Or what about my estrogen? What about these other labs? You do not have to have those measured. A testosterone and an FSH are adequate. Total testosterone is the one we want to measure. Sometimes you'll get a free testosterone. As you can see here, your reference range is 20 to 80. I want you above the reference range when it comes to where your testosterone is sitting at. So we're going to aim, depending on what we do, for these higher levels. FSH stands for follicle stimulating hormone. It comes from our pituitary gland. It tells us what our brain thinks of our overall estrogen status. Estrogen is not supposed to be in the blood. That's not where it's doing any good. It's supposed to be in our breast tissue and our vaginal tissue, in different tissues, including our skin, that helps with some of that crepey stuff that we get older. Estrogen is supposed to be in those places. So we don't care what estrogen is in the blood. We actually care what your brain thinks about your estrogen status. As you can see here, an FSH greater than 21 means that you are peri or postmenopausal. The higher the FSH, the lower your estrogen. They are inversely related, and it's a great measure if we're trying to evaluate what we're doing when it comes to augmenting your estrogen. During perimenopause, this number can fluctuate drastically. I've seen people go from 5 to 50 in a week or two. It's really hard to interpret, but if we get any value greater than 21, that means you're peri or post-menopause. I do not measure progesterone simply because I've measured so many progesterones and they have not done me any good. Everyone's number stays about the same no matter how much progesterone I give them. So I tend not to measure this number. You can certainly measure it if you like. The 17-hydroxyprogesterone is probably, or I'm sorry, 17-hydroxyprogesterone is probably the best one. But to me, it's a waste of your money. It's not going to provide much value in what you have going on. So what can we do? We want to make these things better. And so we're going to talk about how and why and to what extent things like the Feel Great system will help. LCHF stands for low carb healthy fat. A lot of people say that means high fat. It does not. It means healthy fat. So those can certainly help. Supplements can be extremely effective in managing our symptoms. It may not change your lab values, but it can help with some of your symptoms. And then I really like to help women with bioidentical hormone replacement, which can come in the form of pellets, creams, or troches. Pellets are great, but if you have been in menopause for more than 7 years, don't start there. Creams are great because they're extremely consistent. They're effective. We can customize them. Some women just don't like to apply them. Troches are a little less consistent, but they're effective and customizable. And then progesterone, I am so thrilled. The only thing the pharmaceutical companies have done that I approve of is turn bioidentical progesterone into a pharmaceutical grade thing. So our insurance will actually cover it. I love giving progesterone to women. They sleep better, they feel better, their mood improves. It's a great thing to be able to help them with. So I want to talk about the benefits, and I want to pull some of the Ozempic stuff into this as well, just so you guys have an idea. Things that happen when we age are things that happen when we lose hormones. We get osteoporosis, we get sarcopenia, we get brain fog and cognitive decline. We get things like urinary incontinence and, vaginal atrophy. We get the crepey skin. We get all of these miserable things that poor women should not have to go through, but we get to go through. All of these things happen because of loss of hormones, AKA aging. Ozempic is going to decrease your amount of bones. We want to avoid those, especially in menopausal women. We want to avoid those things. The other thing that Ozempic is going to cause problems with is loss of muscle. The Feel Great system doesn't have this impact. And so that's a really good reason for menopausal aged women or perimenopausal aged women to really focus on Feel Great rather than some of these GLP-1 agonists. Optimizing hormones, though, is going to help with all of these other little things that you see over here, our cognitive, our cardiovascular. Estrogen is extremely cardioprotective. If you have a risk of cardiovascular disease, it's extremely helpful. It helps with our sexual health. It helps us maintain pelvic floor function again, things like urinary incontinence and vaginal atrophy, our crepey skin. It actually, if done right, is preventative when it comes to breast cancer. There's lots of dogma, and I love to point this out to women. The dogma of low-fat diets, for example, we've all been told do not fast, eat multiple times a day, 6 to 11 grains of servings of grains per day, all of that dogma. Well, about the same time, we also had the hormone replacement causes breast cancer. Same thing, they did it wrong. They had somebody kind of manipulate the data, and therefore, I just want to know if you have it done right, you will be preventing breast cancer. And then lastly, and most importantly, you can improve your insulin resistance by adding a little bit of estrogen back in. Again, we don't have to do this with hormone replacement. There are some supplements, and we're going to go over those in a minute. Contraindications. Who should not be working on improving their hormones, whether it be through HRT, hormone replacement therapy, or through different supplements? If you have a personal history of breast cancer, you do not want to be doing things to boost your estrogen or progesterone. If you have a personal or immediate history of the BRCA gene, you don't want to be doing these things. If you want to help symptoms, you need to make sure that you work with a well-versed provider, because most providers are not. If you are trying to get pregnant or trying to conceive, you do not want to augment your testosterone. Again, the estrogen, estradiol and estriol are the important ones to focus on for cancer and stuff. And then if you have an intact uterus, even if you want to go on estrogen, you have to go on progesterone. If we give estrogen without progesterone, it will lead to things like uterine cancer or ovarian cancer. So you have to have what we call unopposed estrogen, meaning we're opposing it with a balance of progesterone. So what can we do if you guys want to do some of this on the side? Some recommendations when it comes to supplements. DIM is an excellent, excellent supplement when it comes to reducing hot flashes, vaginal dryness, all the things that happen with menopause. DIM is fantastic, 150 milligrams per day. What happens is it blocks the conversion of testosterone to DHT, which is a negative side effect that we don't want to have happen. So it can be extremely helpful. Helps me with my hot flashes. I'm perimenopausal, and so when I have hot flashes, DIM is kind of my saving grace on top of my estrogen. Be aware that it can turn your urine red because the flavonoids in it. It's made from broccoli and kale. Boron is a mineral that I really like that helps to free up the amount of testosterone you already have. And so there's different globulins that bind to testosterone. Boron helps to lower those. So 6 milligrams a day, it's extremely safe mineral to take. Maca 1,500 to 2,000 really helps with libido and other sexual complaints. Hops is a wonderful thing for insomnia, as is 5-HTP, which can also help with mood. Omega-3s are always helpful. And then there is a supplement called 7-keto-DHEA. I've watched testosterone levels in women improve with this. The downside is I haven't watched symptoms improve. And so it's something that you could try. Maria Emmerich, who's a guru in intermittent fasting and low carb stuff, really likes this, but anecdotally, I always just tell women to use it with caution because the numbers go up, but the symptoms don't tend to improve. The one thing I did want to touch on for sure in this is because I get this question, I'm sure Brittany does too, a gazillion times a day. You know, someone who's perimenopausal hasn't had a period in months. Why did my period start after I started the Feel Great system? Again, remember, every cell in the body can become insulin resistant. One of the main cells that becomes insulin resistant is the ovary. If we improve the insulin resistance of the ovary, it will start to function again. It will start to excrete estrogens and progesterones and help you feel better, but it will also lead to reawakening of your uterus, leading to spotting or periods or whatnot. And so my advice here, and I put on here, if you are peri or recent onset menopause, this is completely normal. If you are in late menopause and you start to have periods, this is not the Feel Great system doing this. There is a risk for uterine cancer there. You need to go to your doctor. If you've been in menopause for more than 3 or 4 years and you start to have periods, I would say you need to go to your doctor if they restart. It's not the Feel Great system, it's something else. So what do I recommend? Again, if you want to do HRT and you want to do bioidentical, I'm a great resource for that. I do not recommend synthetic hormones. I really do not recommend oral hormones, meaning that you swallow them. Other than progesterone, it's fine to swallow. Estrogen and testosterone, if you swallow them, are hard on your liver, and they're not absorbed very well. You don't really get very good results from them. So make sure you use a topical form. Above and beyond that, what can you do? Well, you can do the LCHF. You can follow some intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating, incorporate Feel Great. Women, especially in menopause, need to be doing resistance exercise. Absolutely need to do some form of this. We are so at risk for sarcopenia. Manage your stress, get good sleep. Hopefully we fix the sleep in menopause. Consider the supplements and consider the HRT. So if you want to reach me, here's how you can, the insuliniq.com or Venn Integrative Medicine. I do consider myself to be a hormone and metabolic health specialist, so I'm always happy to help. So there you go.
Amazing, Lindsay. Oh my goodness. Okay, I've got to remake myself the host, I think. There we go. Okay, so Lindsay, I mean, you just covered a lot for us there, and that is most definitely something. If you personally can't benefit from that information, there is probably a woman, a mother, a sister, a friend, a cousin, somebody who would absolutely eat that up and love to understand that on a deeper level, what's going on for them. It's probably something I hear every day is, hormone questions. And like she was explaining, you have estrogen on the other side of a teeter-totter from insulin. And so when estrogen starts dropping, what happens is insulin starts going up, even though you haven't changed anything. Like you're still doing what you were doing before. And so you have to kind of take some measures to do new techniques, new strategies to bring insulin down, and maybe some new strategies to up estrogen a little bit. So thank you for that, Lindsay. Really excellent. Now, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the metabolic syndrome that's affecting so many of us. So this is back to, everyone can relate to what I'm about to teach you. But I also want to make sure you guys know that as excited as I get about this, it's not just me. I want to give you guys some proof that this is really working and that this is really helping people. And so I'm going to ask for everybody's help in just a few minutes here. Not yet, but in a few minutes, I'm going to ask for some help. And I also want you to know that if you have questions for Lindsay, I'm going to bring her back on at the end and do a little Q&A. So feel free to, hold your questions to the end and you'll have a chance to ask. And I'll make sure that Lindsay has time to give some answers there at the end. And she'll also answer questions in the chat as she sees them. So you can put stuff in there now. what I want to talk to you about, I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So I want to talk to you guys just briefly about the problem that we have, right? So we had a study done, this was several years ago, that showed us that only 12% of Americans were metabolically healthy. There's been a more recent study. I don't have my slide updated, but the most recent one I heard was that it's only 7%. So this means if you're in a room with 10 people, 9 out of 10 of them are struggling with their metabolic health. And if we look at specifically diabetes and pre-diabetes, that's 40% of our population. That's a huge amount of people. It's basically half of us, okay, are struggling. So if you are struggling, again, you're not alone. This is a massive problem. It's a problem in children. It's becoming more and more prevalent. The heart health is a major problem that's becoming more prevalent. I mean, that's been the number one cause of death for many years, and it still is, even though it's our most prescribed medication. So, what is metabolic syndrome? How do I know if I have it? If you can say yes to 2 or more of these little bubbles you see here on the screen, then we know that you're dealing with metabolic syndrome, okay? So you can look there and see, okay, do I have an issue in any of these areas? The symptoms, I'm not going to go through these because Lindsay already kind of went through them, but these are a lot of the common symptoms. So why is this happening? Why is it so prevalent? Well, the first thing to point to is the modern diet, right? We look at our fruits and vegetables, they're bigger and sweeter than ever. We look at what we drink, it's juices and sodas. We look at, the foods that we have in the grocery store, everything is processed. Everything is been modified, and with the intent of really keeping us eating as much as possible. It's a smart move by the food companies, and this is kind of what they've done. They looked at a piece of bread. Let's go backwards on this slide. They look at a piece of bread and they go, okay, here we've got a piece of bread that's made from a whole grain. But when you have fiber intact in that grain, it's very filling. How can we make it so that instead of having 1 piece of bread, you could easily eat 4? Well, if we take the fiber off the bran or off the grain, and we're left with just the starchy, fluffy white stuff that you think of when you think of flour, well, then it's not very filling anymore. And the same thing is true with our fruits. I mean, if you take an apple in its whole form and you juice it, on one side of the juicer, you're going to have fiber and pectin and all kinds of stuff. And on the other side, you're basically just going to have sugar water, the carbohydrate left on its own. But of course, that's not the way that nature intended that we consume carbohydrates. In nature, all carbohydrates come packaged with fiber. Even sugar, we think of sugar, it looks like this table sugar, right? But that didn't come that way in nature. It came packaged in fiber. When we think of a grain of rice, we typically think of the white, fluffy stuff. But it has been processed. The bran has been taken off. The germ has been taken out. And so our food is starchy and it's carbohydrate heavy. And this is a perfect recipe to make us feel hungry all the time. And not only are we feeling hungry all the time because our foods are not as filling as they once were, but we also around the same time were given the counsel that to keep our metabolism going, we should eat frequently. We should have 6 small meals. Many of you, maybe you can pop in chat and say if you're one of the many people who have been given that counsel. I was. You got to eat 6 small meals. You don't want your metabolism to slow down. You got to eat consistently. You couple that with the fact that food isn't very filling. Hey, it's easy. You bet I can snack all day, no problem. Well, this leads to a plethora of problems. And I'm going to explain why it leads to all these conditions. But as this persists, as we continue down this path of having this be the way that we are eating, the pattern that we're eating, we are seeing more and more prevalent all of these metabolic issues here. Okay. So what can we do about it? I'm going to pull my whiteboard over because this is how I like to show things. And I'm pretty sure it's not backwards for you. Hopefully it's not. This is what happens. Most of us, we wake up in the morning and we eat whatever we eat. Okay. So if you're on Feel Great, then you might not be doing this. But prior to Feel Great, or most people you know, they wake up, they have their coffee with cream and sugar, or they have a piece of toast or a bowl of cereal or a bagel or their oatmeal, or, you know, you name it. You pick your breakfast food. Right from the start of the day, you spike your blood sugar. Well, what goes up must come down. And so just a couple hours later, we find ourselves hungry again. So we have a handful of this or a bite of that, and then we have our lunch. And then again, we're having a crash. And it's kind of a long time between lunch and dinner, right? I mean, if you eat lunch at noon and you don't eat again till 7 or 6, that's so many hours. So surely we can't be expected to not eat during that period. So we might have a protein bar or a granola bar or a shake or a soda, another coffee, a Coke, something, right? Throughout the afternoon. And then we have our dinner. And then are we done for the day? If you're anything like me, you're not done for the day because you got to eat a little something else before you go to bed, right? So you have a little extra bite of something, and then finally you go to bed. And hopefully this is going to come down while we sleep. These are our blood sugars spiking and dropping all day long. Now, when there is sugar in your blood, your body excretes a hormone called insulin. Insulin comes from the pancreas. And so insulin comes into play. And right as insulin starts putting these sugars away and it starts to drop off, oh, we ate again. And then we had another snack and we ate again. And insulin never had a chance to come down because we were constantly snacking and eating all day. And so we kept insulin elevated almost all day long. What happens over time when we're having our 6 small meals and biting and snacking on things and having a sip of this and a handful of that, when we keep our insulin elevated over time, our cells stop responding to the insulin. They stop listening because insulin's always there. Insulin's always giving our cells a signal. Open up, I have energy for you. And so our cells essentially are just bathing in this insulin. It's like a fish that doesn't even know it's in water. It stops responding. So even though you have insulin there shouting, hey, cell, I have energy for you, it's not getting energy into the cell. And so if you're diabetic, you may know that what do we recommend you do from the doctor? Give you more insulin, because if insulin gets loud enough and big enough, then eventually the cell is going to have to listen. I always kind of compare this to my teenagers who I tell them to clean their room, but unless I raise my voice a little bit, they don't always listen, right? That's kind of what's happening with the cell. You have to get the insulin has to get louder. Well, this is a problem because now we have so much insulin in our bloodstream. And when insulin is high, we cannot burn our fat, okay? We can't burn it. So even if you have some excess fat to lose, you can't get to it when insulin's high. And so if you would like to burn some of that fat, and if you would like to have some of the benefits of not having elevated insulin, because I showed you on the previous slides, all of those symptoms that come from elevated insulin, and they're not fun. Nobody likes them. So we need to become insulin sensitive. We need to do the opposite of insulin resistance. And that's really where the Feel Great system comes into play. And so what we recommend is when you wake up in the morning, instead of having your breakfast that you're used to, you instead skip breakfast. Now, when you're skipping this meal, you're eventually going to get to where you're going to have a lunch and going to have a dinner, okay? This is what your eating pattern is going to look like. But you take the money that you would have spent on that breakfast. Let's think. I mean, if you drive through and you get a beverage somewhere, it's hard to get a beverage these days for under $5, let alone a full meal, okay? So let's call breakfast costing you $5. Take the $5 that you would have spent on breakfast, and instead you're going to purchase the Feel Great system, okay? The Feel Great system is a 30-day supply with these 2 products, okay? So you're going to wake up in the morning, and instead of having breakfast, you're going to use one of these. You're going to start your day off with your Unimate. The Unimate, as you know, is a concentrated version of the yerba mate plant. Has very high levels of chlorogenic acid, makes you super sensitive to insulin, gives you steady, focused energy, is a mood booster. It's fantastic. And there are some significant studies showing how impactful Unimate is instead of just skipping breakfast with water. It actually matters. Intermittent fasting in and of itself, if you just follow this eating pattern of only having 2 meals a day, you're going to see some benefits. Don't get me wrong. But if you want to maximize your results, and if you're going to do this anyway, you might as well maximize your results. You will when you're sipping on Unimate. Unimate also kind of curbs the cravings for carbohydrates and sugars. It kind of calms down that dopamine receptor that wants the instant fix, okay? So you can have your second Unimate before your meal. I often do that before your not right before, but like an hour before I have my lunch. Or if you find yourself really snacky in the afternoon, you might have it between your lunch and dinner, okay? So I'm getting about 16 hours at least of my fast here. And then before my heaviest meal of the day, I'm going to mix up this packet of fiber, this balance. I'm going to do it in about 8 ounces of water. I highly recommend that you shake it up quickly in cold water and just chug it down. You want to have that right before you take your first bite of food. Okay. So the Unimate is sipped. The balance is chugged. I often have a Unimate before my workout, so I drink that one a little bit quicker. But my second Unimate, I really, really spread over time, okay? The balance is chugged. So why do we want the balance? What's going to happen? You know, fasting has all kinds of benefits, not to mention that the Unimate does some extra things I'm going to show you. But fiber is fantastic for so many reasons. I want to show you, let's see here. I'm just going to show you a quick list of the things that fiber does for you. Makes you feel full longer. It naturally balances cholesterol. It makes you sensitive to insulin. It controls your blood sugar. It helps with digestion. It feeds gut microbes and it gives them diverse different things to eat. So you're strengthening an army of different gut microbes instead of just a couple. Most of us eat the same fruits and vegetables all the time. So you're always feeding the same gut microbes. This has fiber that I do not normally eat. So I'm getting diversity that I wouldn't get otherwise. It also helps naturally lower triglycerides and it restores the leptin signaling. The leptin signaling is the hunger hormone. And when we aren't feeling like we have that hunger hormone telling us when to stop eating, that can cause to overeating, okay? So I'm just going to share my screen, just finish this up quickly. But while I'm doing this, while I'm finishing up this last part of this presentation, if you have been using the Feel Great system and you feel that you have experienced measurable results, will you pop into the chat and just share what results have you felt so far? And don't exaggerate. You don't need to embellish. I really just want the honest truth of what you have experienced so far. I want to show you that there are clinical studies proving that this decreases blood sugar. This is a study done on balance, which was this study was done before a waffle breakfast, which we don't recommend, but they did do this study to see what would happen and saw a 34 to 37% drop. That is huge. If you're somebody who is having to jab yourself with an insulin pen to get your blood sugars down, and instead you're going to take this fiber, that's life-changing. I'll drink this down any day before sticking myself with a needle, okay? Huge, life-changing. The Unimate has been proven to increase your GLP-1, which is why you don't have as much of the food cravings and the food noise gets shut down. It increases your GLP-1, your body's production of GLP-1 by 60 to 70%, okay? Now, I want to just briefly go over this. When you first start the Feel Great system, it is very common to have some of these symptoms. They should only last a few weeks. It's common to feel lightheaded or have headaches or muscle cramps. That probably means you need some electrolytes. It's common to feel kind of weak. It's common to have frequent urination. It's common to have heartburn, some stomach grumbling, or some gas and bloating. All of this will subside. But if you've experienced this, you're not doing anything wrong. There are some little tweaks we can make to make this more comfortable, but just stick with it. It's going to get better. Because once you become insulin sensitive, this list is what you can expect. And rather than reading this list to you, I'm actually going to read from the chat of some of the things that people are saying they are experiencing from the Feel Great system. 6 months off blood pressure medication, down 55 pounds, 46 inches, better energy, vertigo gone, inflammation reduced. Oh my goodness, Renee. Sleeping better. Incredible. Wow. Cholesterol. Delana says cholesterol is down 76 points. Scale victory, down 60 pounds. Holy smokes. Dinah says she was a type 2 diabetic. Now she's a pre-diabetic. Her thyroid was inflamed and she couldn't swallow pills, and now she can swallow pills. Wow, that's an incredible victory. Okay, 11 weeks in, Rachel says, lost 19 pounds, increased energy, no restless leg syndrome, no cramps, no cravings. Husband lost 23 pounds, significant decrease in headaches, increased energy, cholesterol now in normal range, blood pressure lower. I mean, you guys, are you seeing this? Shirtless Eddie said he went from 7.8 A1C to a 4.9. Oh, that is so great. Keith lost 40 pounds, can walk and hike 5 miles a day. That's so cool. Jason says, my wife and I have lost combined 80 pounds in the past 3 months. No bloating, mental clarity, sleeping amazing, more energy. You guys, please tell me that you are screenshotting these because I'm not going to be able to read them all because I want to have a minute for coaching. Robert, February 9th was 490 pounds, now 354. I mean, you lost an entire person, Robert. That's incredible. Isela says, I shrunk, lost a bunch of fat from size 12 down to a size 6. Oh my goodness. So you went from a size 12 to a size 6, only lost 5 pounds, but your body composition changed. Okay, guys, I can't keep reading these. We don't have time. I want you to know, screenshot this. This is how you can maximize your results. And I'm going to bring Lindsay back on. I'm going to stop this share. I'm going to bring Lindsay back on and ask if anybody would like to ask any questions. Lindsay is here to answer and I can help as well. Feel free to, let's see what we have in chat. Did you see any, Lindsay, that you wanted to add or answer?
There was one that some other people may have interest in, which is what happens if you restart periods after you've been in menopause? Can you get pregnant? And the answer is no, thank goodness. We get enough estrogen back that we wake up the uterus, but we don't get enough estrogen back actually to ovulate. And so you don't have to worry about pregnancy if you've been menopausal and now all of a sudden have some periods going on. So good question.
Yeah, great question. Okay, so Tony is asking a question. Tony, do you want to come off mute? Tony, I can, let's see. If you want to come off mute, I can find you. But Tony is saying he's on the system for 60 days. Sugar getting high all the time, even though I'm fasting. Is that normal? How would you explain the roller coaster of blood sugars, even when we're fasting, Lindsay?
So early on, it's very common to have a dumping of what we call glycogen. Our carbohydrate stores are being dumped. And so that's okay temporarily. You know, we anticipate it to last anywhere from a few weeks to a few months. If it goes beyond that, you certainly want to be seen, but it's not abnormal at all. It's dumping out that baggage of carbs.
Okay, that we've been storing for probably quite a while, right? We got to unload it somewhere. I always think about that. If your blood sugars are elevating and you haven't eaten, it's got to be coming from storage, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So, okay, Lindsay asks, any idea how this would help or work for someone with POTS? Do you know anything about that, Lindsay?
You know, it tends to be helpful. You got to be careful with hydration and that kind of stuff. I mean, a lot of times when people fast, they don't drink enough. And so make sure that you're staying hydrated. You know, the other problem is electrolytes when it comes to POTS, that you want to make sure that you're supplementing with electrolytes if you're fasting. And so it can be helpful. It just needs to be kind of measured and monitored by someone who knows a little bit about fasting and low carb stuff.
Okay, question from Amy. What if someone is asking if they have to be on this for life? How do you respond to that, Lindsay?
You get the same answers or responses that I do. No, you do not have to be on it for life, but the majority of people want to be on it for life. So it's certainly not something you have to do, but most people
Yeah,
want to.
I always like thinking about the fact that, I mean, this is an extreme example, but you're brushing your teeth because you like the result of brushing your teeth, right? And so if you stop brushing your teeth, you can find another way to clean them. It just seems like that's the easiest way. And for most people using this system, they go, "Oh, I'm finally getting adequate fiber. I'm finally fasting comfortably. I guess I could go find another way to do both of those things." But this has made it easy. I can travel with this. I can take it to a wedding, a birthday party, whatever, and I'm not having to really think about it too much. Like, it allows you to kind of have some simplicity that, at least for me, is worth a lot. Not to mention that a lot of people find that they save money. So that's cool. Another question that somebody's asking is, when people say that their cholesterol is genetically high, can they still see benefits with the system?
For sure, because typically triglyceride is not a genetically high thing, and the triglyceride to HDL ratio is what we're most worried about. People with familial hypercholesterolemia is what you're talking about. I really recommend you get a CAC score. And if you're at 0, you don't have to worry. Do your best to fix that triglyceride to HDL ratio and get it below at least 1.5, but optimally below 1.
Okay, and this is the last one, and then we're going to sign off because I'm already a minute over and really got to be like Trent and respect everybody's time. So Randy says that he's always going to be insulin resistant. Is that true? Can we address that?
No, you will not. If you do the right things, the Feel Great system is amazing. Let me just kudos to Feel Great. If you are severely insulin resistant, you also have to flex that fasting muscle and follow a low carbohydrate diet. And 100% it can be reversed. So it's
Yes, I love
good
it.
news.
I actually put that on my little tips to maximize. If you're struggling or you feel kind of stuck, use these tools to help you cut some carbs. Try going to 50 carbs a day or even less if you can. And if you really need help to monitor those carbs and figure out what the right plan is for you, that's another thing Lindsay can help you with. So hit Lindsay up. Okay, you guys, thank you for being here. What a wonderful call. Really appreciate all of your participation, and I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. Come next week.